So, good afternoon and welcome to Leading Minds. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you for you sharing your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. I understand that in the current climate, it is still very busy, even though we're working from home. People are still very busy, so I really do appreciate you sharing your time with us this afternoon. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the Leading Minds program. Share with you some of the thinking that goes behind the concept of leading minds, and then we can open up and ask any questions that might come on that you may have about the program itself. So leading minds is a concept that I've been working on for quite a while now. And even though we it obviously has been triggered a little bit by the current global crisis, it's something that we would have launched anyway this year. And the reason why is we genuinely feel that there's a better way for us to help our leaders to grow and develop. If we think about the traditional leadership program, sending people off for full days or residential programs where they learn a predetermined agenda of items that have been created in isolation from what they do, hoping that they take something from it and then can apply it back in their workplace. And some of these programs are great. So I'm not dismissing the value of some leadership programs. I've run many good quality leadership programs with teams, and I've had feedback that it has had positive impacts in terms of the individuals who've been on those programs. So it's not that all leadership programs don't work, but there's more and more evidence that those leadership programs aren't necessarily creating the behavioral changes that we're looking for at the kind of individual level back in our organizations. And certainly the dearth of leadership talent that we're seeing in global organizations after 20 plus years of investing in this type of program is maybe an indicator that actually then it's time for a change, time for us to do something different. In my own business, we're finding that we're having ever more of a drive towards shorter, more impactful sessions. But we're also, in many cases, sponsored by a HR team, and often there is a demand from businesses to have a program that's fully laid out so they can see what they're kind of buying into. And this desire to map things out in advance means that a lot of programs are kind of created outside of the reality of what's going on in the world itself. And whilst people can come on these programs and get real value from them, is it really making that shift, and is it really arming them to cope with the decisions that they're making day in, day out? We're hearing lots more within the learning community around kind of learning in the workflow, and actually the way that we are learning as a species, the way that we're learning everything is changing. We've got access to information and guidance at the touch of a button on our smart devices and keypads that allows us to look in and explore concepts very quickly. So this idea of going away and having a predetermined menu of courses delivered to you that is removed from what you do day in, day out, and expecting that you'll take that knowledge and then still have it there ready when you need to face into that situation in maybe 3, 6, 12 months time is probably unrealistic as a way that we need to lead and develop. So we needed a new way. Then the coronavirus has hit, and it's suddenly amplified and magnified some of the challenge that we have. So we're having leaders who are faced with a landscape and choices that are totally new and different to anything that they've been prepared for. And they are making decisions, and those decisions are going to have consequences. So it just felt like the perfect time for us to launch Leading Minds, to help our leaders through this most challenging period, and then to potentially arm them to thrive as they come out the other end of this particular crisis that we're in. So thus, Leading Minds was born. And if we think about the current crisis as a prime example, many of us and many of the leaders who are making really big decisions in government will have probably sat on numerous management development or leadership development programs. But have any of those programs, any of those experiences that we've been on, really armed us to cope in the current situation? Has it really given us an opportunity to explore how we would operate in a crisis like we're facing? And I think the answer to that is, no matter how good it's been, no matter how in-depth it's been, the answer to that would be no. The current crisis is just magnifying the obsolescence of traditional approaches to leadership development and is crying out for something that disrupts the way that we've previously looked at leadership development and looks for a new mode or a new way of helping us to prepare our leaders to face into and thrive in crisis situations like we're facing. So why do we need leading minds? Well, I guess I've just articulated that the former modes don't necessarily work, but why does leading minds in particular work? Why is this the new way for us to develop our leaders? Well, we're facing into a need for a new way to work, both personally and with our teams. We're challenged to make tough decisions without a plan to guide us. We're challenged to cope with ambiguity and uncertainty when none of us knows what is coming next or what good looks like. We need to lead remote teams. We need to discover new ways to communicate effectively with our people. We have to relinquish control because we won't be there to save the day all the time, and we won't be able to always see what's going on. We need to find new ways to satisfy the demands of our customers. We've got to be innovative in our solutions, find ways around the hurdles that we are facing. And we need to have highly emotional driven conversations with team members who may be suffering personally as a result of this global pandemic. Now, there are a list of reasons why we need to help our leaders to cope and thrive in this current environment. But with the exception maybe of the final one, all of those statements could have applied 3 months ago, well ahead of this current crisis that we're in. They all would have described a changing workplace that we are all being faced with outside of this crisis. Again, the crisis is just magnifying the reasons why we need to change and driving a kind of determination to change now. But all of those statements would have been relevant even if we weren't facing the current global pandemic. So there's a real need for us to do something different. And we believe creating a community of leading minds, people who come together with expertise and knowledge to be able to explore the challenge they're facing together is the way to go forward. So that's why we have created this concept around leading minds and why we're chosen to launch it in this period where people need the most help and most support to enable them to face into the challenges that they are dealing with and to arm them with the knowledge and the ability in the moment when they need it to be able to make effective decisions. And don't forget, many of the decisions that we're going to make are going to last for a long time. So we want to make sure that our teams and our leaders are given the knowledge and the information to enable them to really look into and effectively make those choices, given the best knowledge and experience that they can gain, which is why we want to launch Leading Minds. So what is Leading Minds? Well, first and foremost, it is a community. It's a community of leaders who come together and join together to help and support one another. And this is really important. So yes, it's a program and it's designed to help you with your own personal leadership challenges, but it's also about bringing together collective thoughts on how we can all work to help one another grow together, achieve together, and develop together. The way that we'll do this is we'll have a 90-minute facilitated Zoom meeting. And this meeting will be open for all of those people within the Leading Minds community to come together. Hosted by either myself or one of our expert coaches who will kind of manage and facilitate the group discussions. But really, it's the power of that collective mind coming together, which is what really sits at the heart of Leading Minds. So we will help you to think into the challenges that you're facing together as a group and collectively give advice, guidance, views, opinions, thoughts, examples that you can take away and apply straight into your own leadership practice to really tackle the things that matter to you. The agenda is going to be driven by you. What is it that you want to cover? What's relevant for you at this moment in time that's going to make the biggest difference for you to face into the challenge that you're having to deal with in your organizations? Prior to each of the calls, I will send out a group email to all of the people who've registered for the program. And that email will be asking you for the questions that you have around how to cope and thrive and survive in the current environment. So what is it that's on your agenda? We'll ask you to send those questions in advance. And what we'll do is we'll table those questions on a first come, first served basis. So the earlier you get your question in, the earlier into the call that your question will be asked. And what that allows us to do is, it allows us to see what the overall themes are. So if we've got consistency of themes from different members of the Leading Minds community, we can then structure a little bit of learning around that particular theme to support the sessions. But we can also join those questions up. So if we have 2 or 3 people asking the similar or same question, then we can have a small group discussion with that micro kind of community, whilst everybody else is present to be able to see, to discuss that particular issue and give some advice and guidance into that particular challenge. And of course, having it in advance gives us a chance to do some preparation for the call, but also because we'll have other leading minds in the call, when you're asking your particular question, other people can use their input to enable you to think differently about the challenge. So we've got this collective mind, this collective consciousness, all thinking into your individual challenges to give you the best possible experience and advice. People who maybe have faced something similar before, or maybe have just a view that they're working through it themselves at this moment, can help you to think into your own challenge. So the agenda will always be driven by you, and it will always create this collective ability to face into your challenge. So it creates this open, supportive space for us to help you to find your path to success. We'll also create some mutual accountability. So one of the things that is often labeled at traditional leadership programs is we go away, we learn this content in isolation, we then get back, the day job takes over, and none of the things actually happen, and that's why change doesn't come into force. So what we'll create within the Leading Minds community is some mutual accountability. Each person who asks a question will be asked to kind of commit to certain actions that they're going to take on the back of the advice, guidance, support that they've been given, and make one personal commitment of what they're going to do. And in the community, we'll then hold one another to account for those actions, for those changes that we're going to put in place. So there's a direct correlation between the advice, guidance, learning that we're going through, and then the commitments that we have to act and the accountability that sits on the back of it. Like any good coaching program, the accountability, having somebody who is going to challenge you around what have you done with the information, is really critical and is a powerful part of the whole Leading Minds program. But not just that, we've got the observational learning. So you may not necessarily have a question each time that you come on the call, but you can listen into the questions of other people. And whilst you may not have necessarily thought about that being relevant to you at this moment in time, it may just say, well, actually, yes, I'm dealing with something very similar in my organization, and I can learn from what other people are doing. Or you may not necessarily be facing it now, but something happens a week from the call that is connected to what we've talked about. And because you sat through other leaders thinking into how they would tackle that problem, you're already armed with some of the answers to potentially help you through any of the decisions that you're having to make. In between the sessions, we will have an ongoing support via a WhatsApp group and an email group. So again, based on your own preferences, you don't have to be part of this, but there'll be an open invitation to anybody who's in the Leading Minds community to join a WhatsApp group that will help to support. And that's really there so you've got support in your pocket at any moment that you're working as a leader. So you might be facing a difficult conversation that you need to have with a member of your team, and you want some advice or guidance on how best to have that conversation. You'll be able to drop a note into the WhatsApp group, and the community will be there to support you and help you, alongside obviously our professional coaches, who will also give their views and thoughts on how you might tackle that particular challenge or issue. Again, coming from a place of experience and support to help you with your thinking so you can really face into those challenges effectively. We'll also be launching some member-only resources and content. We'll do a special weekly blog of content that's just aimed at leading minds, and we'll reinforce some of the learnings from our calls. So if we've had a call that's centered around a particular topic, we can then bring some additional resources to help you with your learning around that particular subject area. And we can collate that together into a special weekly blog that will be sent out, which will only go to you guys. So if you commit to this program, you'll get access to additional information that we will specially curate and collate and send out just to this community. And of course, we'll encourage the community to share information that they might have with one another as well. And the aim being for this Leading Minds program initially is to support you through the peak of the current crisis. So we've scheduled 5 calls every 2 weeks throughout the current coronavirus crisis. The aim being is that you've regularly got somewhere to turn for help and advice and guidance at a time when you need it most, when you're most challenged and you're probably facing a situation that none of us have ever faced into before. Then we can work together and help one another through the challenge, through some of the decision making, through some of the thinking that you're having to do. So when we do get through the current crisis, we are leading into the opportunities that might exist on the other side in a much better way. I was doing some research this morning, and McKinsey have just released an article saying that leadership and direction are the 2 things that are going to be most important for organizations to be effective coming through crises like this. So leadership and direction are the 2 capabilities that are going to be most in demand, based on research from thousands of leaders that McKinsey have assessed and evaluated, saying that those are the 2 organizational capabilities that are going to be most in demand as we lead through the crisis, and innovation being the one that will be most in demand once we get through and we're looking at ways to maximize opportunities that come our way the other side. Leading Minds is the perfect vehicle to enable you to have clear leadership, be able to set clear direction, and look at being innovative as we come through this crisis and we're into a place where we're starting to work and getting, I guess I was going to say back to normal, but actually getting back to the new normal, or the new way that the world is going to operate on the back of this crisis. And we're going to need that opportunities to explore ways to be innovative, change the way that we work to enable us to thrive into the current or that future state that we're about to go into. So we're going to set Leader Minds up initially for that period of time. We'll then move this into more of a subscription kind of model, where for those leaders who are really benefited from it, are going to appreciate and value this program, then you will continue to be able to access the support as we move through into the future. Because one of the things I truly believe in Leading Minds is it won't be something that you'll just need in the short term. It'll actually be a way of developing our leaders on an ongoing basis, and a very cost-effective way to support leaders as they continue to be challenged as the world adapts to a post-coronavirus landscape. What is that going to mean for many organizations? And leaders are going to need ongoing support as we move through. So following the first kind of crisis period, we'll reevaluate where we are. If we feel we need to set up another couple of calls in the interim or in the short term because we're not through the crisis, we'll do that within your current payment that we've agreed. But post that time, when we've started to see things creating this new normal, we'll then move into a subscription model. And again, we'll address and talk to the community at that point around what that opportunity looks like moving forward. So I hope you agree that Leading Minds is a new way for us to tackle the challenge of helping our leaders to grow and develop as they progress and deal with the ambiguity and the volatility of the landscape that we're currently in, and actually the changing landscape of the new world of work as we're facing into it. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention, and to tuning in and listening to this Leading Minds discussion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just call on you. If there are any questions that people want to ask, then I'll call on those questions to be asked from those people who are on the session this afternoon. So we'll open up the mics in just a second and invite you to ask your question.